Hi, all, and welcome to the Holistic Ascent podcast, where we talk about specific wellness tools, resources, and practices to become more empowered in our wellness journeys. I'm Lexie Haren, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by Whitney Erwin. Whitney is an international holistic health practitioner, Ayurvedic strategist, and clinical herbalist, avid yogi, scientist, world traveler, free spirit, and nature lover. Whitney loves to apply holistic health and natural medicines to help women with chronic hormonal imbalances reduce pain, restore balance and vibrant energy, and live a long, healthy life. Welcome, Whitney, to the podcast today. I'm so excited to chat with you about herbalism, Ayurvedic medicine, and women's health in general.
Likewise, Lexi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, if you want to start out with telling us a little bit about yourself and the work that you're doing in this holistic wellness space, I'd love to learn more.
Yes, so I own a holistic healthcare practice called Four Seasons Harmony, Holistic Health, Healing, and Ayurveda. And I'm based in Western Virginia in the Appalachian Mountains, although I work with people all around the world through online consultations, and I do a lot of teaching and workshops. So I specialize in women's health, and I love to apply natural medicines and holistic health techniques to help women with chronic hormonal imbalances to reduce pain, build and restore vitality and balance, and live a long, healthy life. So very much my heart and soul's work. I feel like I couldn't be doing anything else.
I love that you found your passion and you've really dug into that. Well, something that really stood out to me when I first met you was that you actually have your master's in clinical, I might butcher this here, but is it clinical
No,
herbology or what is it called?
clinical herbal medicine. Yeah.
Okay. Oh my goodness, that's amazing. How did you know you wanted to study that and eventually get into this as your career?
Oh, wow. It's been such a journey. So, I was reflecting on when could I trace that back? Is there an origin? It's truly been my whole life, and uh, something that has been so strongly within me. Just loving nature, I think, was what originally brought me to finding plant medicine. And I just remember collecting wildflowers when I was younger and bringing them to my family, and just having so much joy around that, and just feeling such connection and oneness and happiness, just spending hours outside and with my brothers and neighbors. And then when I was in, high school, so I had an amazing ecology program, and just phenomenal scientist teachers. So the area that I grew up is pretty rural. So people would hunt with a bow and arrow and build that kind of culture.
Yeah.
It's very normalized. And so we just have all these experiential learning opportunities. And I got into taking care of plants at a greenhouse. And then I was asked by somebody that was visiting during this native plant sale when I was gosh, I'm 16. And she's like, do you want to come work for my native plant company? And that turned into a 6-year job. And I just felt like what I wanted to study when I started college was environmental science. I also did a lot of art and creative things at the same time. Started off as a double major. And so I spent a lot of time working on organic farms, and I think having direct experience working with plants and just feeling so happy, but also so inspired and in awe of how complex plants are. And I still feel that same way with many degrees and trainings later. So then going through my own personal health struggles, and I'm so sensitive to even just over the counter Advil or Tylenol, I get immediately sick. And so for me personally, plants have been life-changing in medicinal therapeutic ways. So I feel they saved my life many, many times, continue to do that. And then, going into my practice full time and seeking to be of service in the world, and just seeing such a need for other people to safely and confidently integrate herbal medicine into their daily lives for their health and well-being. So it brings me to this present day, and so much more I feel to discover in that path as well.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I feel like the world could be never ending once you dig into all of this. It just opens up Pandora's box. When you refer to like herbalism, does that mean that you're creating and making your own tinctures and your own herbal remedies in your home and then you're dispensing those to clients? What does that look like?
Yeah, there's so many different ways that you can practice and share herbal medicine, all of which I love and respect. And so I'm a clinical herbalist. By professional standards, that's like what I hang my hat as. And that means that I can recommend therapeutic dosaging of internal medicine of plants. And I have an apothecary at Four Seasons Harmony with hundreds of different herbs. And I don't do anything for the general public yet, besides make a lot of recommendations like in public workshops and on my blog and help anybody, confidently feel safe with plant medicine. But for my clients that come in, I do like several hours of an intake process. And then I make customized clinical herbal formulas that I handcraft for them. And so every single one is different. Like I've never made the same one twice since 2016. And I like to do that for at least 3-6 months with my new clients. So they're really like having a deep experience with plants.
I love that individualized approach and that no two are the same. I think that's so valuable and so important in today's wellness world.
Yes, there's no one size fits all, I should say,
Yeah.
when it comes to health. And yeah, I think so many of my women plateau with that as well. And like they really just like can't get further without
Yeah.
that customized approach.
So, what led you into incorporating like Ayurvedic work into your practice as well?
Yes. So, I love to learn. That's something that I think will be with me for the rest of my life. So, like all forms of healing systems and medicine to me are endlessly fascinating. So, I'm also a big yogi, and I've been into that for 23 years plus, and many different phases along that journey. But what I found along the way was I would feel like incredible in my yogic practice. And when I would go to classes or working with teachers, and then I was still struggling with some other big things around my health. And I kind of got to the point where I tried so many things when I was in my 20s, and it was like just a really hard time for me trying to figure out what would work for my body and not. And I was like, what more might yoga offer? Because
Yeah.
I dabbled in a few things around lifestyle and wellness, but finding Ayurveda was through my love of yoga. And I just felt like, okay, somebody that's practicing yoga from integrity is probably going to be of similar values and that they might really be able to help me out. And that's exactly what I found. But I didn't really know that much about Ayurveda. And that's been like, gosh, over 10 years now. And it completely changed my life. So looking for answers around stubborn health problems that were unresolved, and then just finding like a whole new world and lifestyle that opened up.
So, would you be able to explain for someone that might not know much about Ayurveda, like, what are the principles that it sort of stands on, and what does its approach to health look like?
Yes. So Ayurveda literally translates from the Sanskrit language to the science of life and longevity. And it is well respected by many scholars to be one of the oldest natural intact healing systems in the world. So going back like over 5,000 years BC. And if you look at all modern forms of medicine, like everywhere on the planet, all of them can historically trace their roots back to Ayurveda. So it's also called the sister healing science to yoga. It's like the health and wellness branch. And yeah, it can include all sorts of different internal medicines, but also massage, Reiki, herbology, mindfulness, and then leading into how that can help with other aspects of your life too, with like life purpose.
Wow, so it kind of has a very wide scope then in the wellness world.
Yes, in my experience.
Okay. Cool. So is there like are there specific diets and things that you have people on that you're guiding and coaching through this, or what does that look like?
Yeah, wonderful question. So Ayurveda really embodies this view that everybody's health is different and what we could call in Ayurvedic terms prakriti, like your
Mhm.
constitution. So it's very similar to like your DNA. And I think we could all agree, with modern science, like not everybody has the same genes.
Right.
And so we want to take those individual variances into account. And Ayurveda just has really in depth and poetic language to describe different characteristics around like core health patterns, and then how that can relate to your specific mind body constitutional type. So usually the first step is learning what that is. And do you lean more to being more anxious or restless, or like having trouble sleeping? Or do you lean more to depression and like having trouble getting out of bed in the morning? Or do you lean to anger easily? Things like that. That is kind of like these hard wirings within us. Just observing that and kind of accepting that we're all really unique,
Yeah.
and then going into how to restore balance and harmony for each person so they can live in optimal health, with herbs, with diet. And yes, there's lots of very detailed programs that are Ayurvedic depending on what's going on with your health imbalances.
Right. So you've been able to find like a beautiful blend of utilizing this approach as well as clinical herbalism and bring it together in your practice.
That's exactly right.
Okay, very cool. So, what are some of the most common conditions and symptoms that you're treating and working with women on in your practice?
Yes. Oh gosh. So many things can show up in women's health, and sometimes like 20 or 30 at once.
Yeah.
And if you're listening, like that's not like a rare thing. And I specialize in hormonal imbalances and looking at, how to restore harmony when that's been going on in usually a very long time, not just something like intermittent or like the one time like PMS symptom. So that shows up as progesterone deficiency, cramps, infertility, insomnia, anxiety, depression, hot flashes. So, like some major rites of passage, like I'll support women around, especially like with birth, postpartum, menopause, and then everything in between as well. I feel like there's something for everybody, but that's really a huge missing piece that I've seen from most of my women. Like they just can't move the needle forward without addressing underlying hormonal imbalances.
Most definitely. So, do you find that you're digging like way back into a woman's health history when you're working through all of this, like even from birth or like past generations, and you're able to address that with the work that you're doing too?
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Okay, very cool. Well, if someone's listening and they're struggling with some hormone imbalances they believe to be, are there like some go-to herbs that you would recommend right off the bat without doing like a full-blown consultation, but just like herbs that would be supportive?
Yes, yes, for sure. So there's, like specific herbs within different medicine lineages. Like there's Ayurvedic herbs, and there's like traditional Chinese medicine herbs. There's then also the ability to kind of work with all of those in different systems. So again, just focusing on Ayurveda and any kind of herbs that might help anybody and what they might need at any given time. So I find that if you're new to herbal medicine, starting with flower essences and tea are extremely safe. And there's a couple of general herbal actions that for most women I find to be extremely helpful, to again, start to feel better. And this is usually a slow, steady process. So give yourself at least like 4 to 6 menstrual cycles to notice optimum benefit, although you probably notice differences, within several weeks. So hormonal normalizers are a big one that I recommend to a lot of my women. And so something like shatavari or blessed thistle tea. If you can get a tea bag, or even better, cut and sifted whole fresh herbs, like from a local herbalist or apothecary, and just start drinking that regularly, like if you can, most days of the week. And then for something of like a higher therapeutic dosage, like tinctures or powders, you might want to meet with an herbalist down the road, but it's really hard to go wrong with a lot of like long-standing herbs in the beginning, because any like ethical herbalist and apothecary is only going to be providing like extremely safe herbs to choose from, and flower essences have no contraindication. So talk about like extreme safety. That's something that I'll recommend for infants, or if you have to go into surgery last minute. And you could take like 2 to 4 drops a day for several weeks and see how that affects your stress levels, see how that affects your next cycle, and go from there.
Great. Are you able to explain what flower essences are for those of us who may not know?
Yes, they're bioenergetic preparations of flowers, of plants. And so, some of my teachers, I can reflect on, Master Herbalist teacher Sarah Crow, like, will travel to wild places, like studying the medicinal properties of various flowers. So, it's a whole world. It's very complex. And if you were to, make a flower essence, you would want to gather the flowers in a very sustainable way and make sure you're not hurting the plant and that there is abundance. And there is it's like a bioenergetic field around flowers, and you can, study that in great depth. And we can look at that through the lens of modern science as well. And then we want to like distill that energetic pattern into a way that's transferable to the human body. Yeah. So that's essentially what they are. And, I work with hundreds and hundreds of my apothecary. And when I do my custom blending, I'm kind of like choosing the heavy hitter ones first that I feel like would make the best difference, like emergency care or for nourishing, like, the sacred feminine, helping to prepare for a centered birth, reducing judgmental tendencies. So if I could make a comparison on what it mostly works with first, is like helping to heal blocks in the central nervous system. So yeah, so powerful, but also very gentle as well. As I mentioned, they're very safe to work with.
Right. Okay. So it's very similar to the concept of homeopathy, where we're using like frequency medicine and these different things from nature to help stimulate the natural healing response within the body.
Yes, and I think I saw
Okay.
you study like homeopathy.
Yeah, I am. Yeah. And so when you're talking about the flower essences, I don't really know much about the flower essences, but I know they kind of fall under a certain branch of homeopathy and to some degree. But it seems really, when you were talking about it just now, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the same process that we undergo as homeopaths to like get a certain remedy as we go. There's people that go out there and they actually go search for the remedies in nature. And then, like you said, harvest in a sustainable way and then do provings on them to make sure that this is actually going to be effective and an effective remedy for people. And I think it's so cool that there's still a world out there of exploring even more remedies for all of us.
Yes, I would say there's so much that's still uncharted, and
Yeah.
just these like very wild places and the medicine that's available for humanity. Yeah, I love that so much. I don't do a lot with homeopathic medicine. I teach herbal first aid and home pharmacy, and I often will adapt that for children. So it's very safe for pediatric health. And there's a few favorites that I'll work with and also do them in Ayurvedic cleansing. It's incredible. I refer out a lot to homeopathic doctors because they have just such an incredible amount of wisdom. But I think it's very similar when you're thinking about dosing. I'll often say it's kind of like a homeopathic dose, just like, tiny medicinal amounts over time for a profound healing effect.
Right. And I think that's so valuable to point out as far as like a safety perspective too, is like sometimes we're used to buying a supplement at the store or over the counter drugs or whatever that is and like popping a bunch, and usually we think like more is better or something, but sometimes that's not always the case. I would imagine it's the same with flower essences, that you're really just looking for a small dose of that frequency and not necessarily more.
That's right. Yes. And
Okay.
I totally agree. Sometimes more is not better. Sometimes it is. And yeah, and some things are just so potent that you can really pare it down and it'll last so much longer as well. So something like 2 to 4 drops, a couple of times a day over several weeks or months, and until you've embodied like a healing reactions. Yes, there's so much within that, and everybody's so different too. I can't say like everybody do it just for 2 weeks at this dosage, like,
Right.
because that might be 2 weeks for one person or 2 years for another person, and all of that's perfect. But just that you're finding something that's compatible for you and helping you.
Hey, it's Lexie. I hope you're enjoying this episode so far. This episode is sponsored by Haren Holistics, Functional Labs, and Homeopathy. Haren Holistics' goal is to bring empowerment back to you in your wellness journey. By using functional lab tests like the hair tissue mineral analysis, Haren Holistics is able to provide you with individualized protocols that are unique to you and your life circumstances. You can learn more about working with a qualified practitioner through Haren Holistics by visiting HarenHolistics.com and finding the service and booking guide. also available here in the show notes. Mention the Holistic Ascent podcast to get 10% off your services. Now, let's get back to the show. If we are preparing like an herbal tea at home, is there a preferred method of doing that? Like, is it better to make a hot tea or to put the herbs in a mason jar and put it in the fridge overnight?
Yeah, wonderful question. There's many ways to make teas, and it's one of my favorite things to do in the kitchen. Very easy to do, and what you can do with any herb. So say you have lemon balm in your garden, or thyme, or lavender, peppermint, things like that. So just one herb or several mixed together. Ideally, get a feel for the amount. If it's not fresh, if it's dried, I usually recommend like at least 5 grams or more. So that's about like 3 standard tea bags together. For what we call an infusion, that would be boiling water, and then taking your tea bags or your cut and sifted whole herbs and putting them into some kind of container, like a muslin bag, tea ball. You could put them directly in a teapot as well and strain them later, and then pour the boiling water over the herbs and then let them steep for like at least 15 minutes or longer. So I've done that in mason jars. You have to be careful if it's boiling water. So usually I do that later once it's cool. And I like to make it easy for people. Like, so 15 minutes is perfect. Then you might get a second batch out of the same herbs, but you can absolutely let it sit longer. So the longer it sits, the stronger the medicine. That would be different though with cold water. So I would say almost all herbal medicine plants that we know of can be made into a tea. And usually with hot water, like if you're using like a hot enough temperature, that's going to help get a lot of the medicine constituents out. With some exceptions though, like wild cherry bark, you want to use cold water. You don't need to boil it at all. And then you just can plop it in a mason jar, like same process, put like lukewarm or even cold water over it and let it sit for 6 to 8 hours overnight or out in the sun or moonlight. And then you'll have a beautiful batch of sun tea.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing. So, do you offer workshops or virtual events for people on how they can bring this incredible healing craft into their own homes?
Yeah, I love to offer workshops, and I'm doing several in-person ones, coming up. And then it also depends on demand as well. Like I offered a special topic workshop in children's herbal home pharmacy and first aid, I would say about 4 years or so ago. And that was really driven by a group of mothers who were like, can you please teach us this? And I was like, okay, well, let me know like a few months from now if you're still serious, and like we'll make it happen. Sure enough, they were. It was this beautiful event. I've run it again. So, it all also depends on where is the interest. What are people really thirsty for? And then I'm so happy to offer those special topics to help out.
As we're switching from fall to winter and there might be more sickness in the air and things like that, do you have any go-to remedies or concoctions that you recommend during this season for support?
Yeah, so many. And yeah, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, like we are, like this is the time. Definitely start with some immunity boosting support, and then just keep that going all the way through the winter. And I think there's several ways you could think about herbal medicine. I think for everybody, having herbs every day forever is extremely beneficial for preventive health. And then there might be another level if you're already sick or dealing with chronic imbalances that might be more acute, and we might want to do even more support. But my like perspective and what I teach all of my women is to have some herbs like every day year round forever. And let's just adapt it for what we need. So some of my favorites for immunity boosting are yogi tea and elderberry syrup. You can also increase other things in your diet as well. More vitamin C is fantastic. I think most people have heard about elderberries now, and it's just so powerful and incredible. It's an antiviral. So that's very helpful to kind of get ahead of like cold and flu season. And you could take like a teaspoon of that a day. And I have a recipe on my blog on my website. It's free. Anybody can
Awesome.
access it so they can make it at home. And then if you're feeling like something's coming on, then you can increase the dosage to like a tablespoon every hour. So Yeah, that's one. The yoga tea, that's a whole brand. There's so many different ways that you can make that. The one I'm thinking of is from a yogic lineage that will blend in 5 different whole herbs together. So
Okay.
you can absolutely do like a smaller amount. I usually make a huge batch at once with like a whole gallon of water and herbs, and then it'll last for several days. Children love it, adults love it. It's kind of like a non-caffeinated chai, and yeah, extremely potent. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I could share the recipe if you're like.
Yeah, that would be great. Oh my goodness. That sounds so good to me. I'll put it in the resources of the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's cinnamon sticks, so like your whole house just smells like divine for several hours. Yeah, I can share that later. It's essentially like 20 cardamom pods whole. You can crush them a little bit, and 20 whole black peppercorns, 1 or 2 inches of ginger root. Let's see, a couple of cinnamon sticks. I usually do 5 to 7, and then about 20 whole cloves.
Okay.
And you might recognize some of those as common kitchen spices, right?
Yeah.
And they're just like incredibly powerful antiviral, antibacterial, antifungal properties. And then just boil all of those together for several hours and let it sit overnight. And then you have this really strong, healthy, safe batch of tea that you can live on like all through the fall and winter.
Oh my goodness. It sounds like so soothing to the soul as I'm thinking about it right now.
Yes, that too.
So warming. If you don't mind digging into how we can use some of these herbal remedies for supporting the gut health, that would be amazing.
Yeah, well, there's like so many digestive herbs. Actually, most of the ones I just mentioned in that tea are extremely helpful for supporting GI health. And even just a pure ginger tea is fantastic. That's like one of my top easy go-tos. I'll say to my women, just have some ginger chews or ginger tea on hand all the time, just in case something is off and you feel bloating or heartburn, or you're starting to have elimination problems, like anything related to GI health, or just PMS symptoms, because it's really helpful for hormonal balance. And taking that whenever you need. The more that you do herbs, I find it helps get into your parasympathetic nervous system more as well. So we want to reduce the stress response as much as we possibly can. And that's so intimately tied to gut health as well. So if we're in a sympathetic nervous system, we can't digest food. So we also want to flip the switch so our body can recognize what it's like to rest, digest, and heal. And herbs can help with that.
I think that's incredible. And this will be like perfect segue from my last podcast recording too, because we were talking about how we physically carry our bodies and how that impacts our nervous system, like the position of our rib cage pressing on our fight or flight response. And so I feel like taking that into account as well as the internal aspects is like looking more at the holistic picture of like, how can we support this?
I love that so much. Yes.
I'm interested in digging maybe a little bit more into like actual like promotion of healing within the body from herbs. Like, you feel like it's connecting because it's connecting us more closer to nature, that it's grounding our bodies in a way and promoting that healing?
100%. If we look at like all traditional cultures around the world and all of their medicine systems, all of them include herbs. And so I think it just speaks to our humanity. Like, I can't think of anything more basic for our survival than plants. Like, every single breath that we take is because of plants. Like, we're so intimately connected, even though I think we oftentimes in modern society have grown so disconnected. It's still there. It hasn't gone away. And I think that can kind of further how long it will take us to heal the further we are from nature. So the closer we are to nature and we're opening to the healing benefits, I think we'll heal faster on many levels. And so I think that just looking at ethnobotanical knowledge and traditional cultural wisdom, there's so much there for thousands of years. So these evidence-based systems that are still intact, even if they've been in some places underfunded or dismissed or pushed aside, they're still there. So it's not just like a new age fad. That's one thing I always talk about. Like, just like, like, have we tried this long enough to know that it'll work? So then you're looking at like all of the elements from nature infused into plants. So it's not something that's just inside. Wonderful to have things from laboratories for sure, but you're looking at something that is influenced by like this whole form from nature. So sunlight, moonlight, all of the nutrients from the soil. And when you look at the science, which now we know very clearly between like even wild harvested versus domesticated certified organic plants, both of which are incredibly beneficial and safe. Wild harvested is more potent. It offers more medicinal value. So I feel like it's just letting nature take care of you. And I think for so many women, it's returning to a state of like inner knowing and ancestral wisdom as well. Like it just feels so good to be nourished by nature's medicine.
I guess returning for sure. Well, do you think it's valuable for someone to focus more on utilizing the herbs that are in their region that they live in versus sourcing herbs maybe from like China or from another area around the world? Or do you think there's value in creating a blend of both?
Yes, I'm more the latter, like creating a blend of both. There's definitely different perspectives on that. I know like bioregional herbalists, and they're like, I only will apply and use herbs in like within a radius of where I live. Maybe that's 10 miles, maybe it's 100 miles, and that's it. And I think for me, it's two separate issues, like the issue of transportation being so damaging to the environment and global warming. I don't think it has to be that way, but I think that's part of what influences a lot of people's decisions. Now, obviously, we want to support local growers as well and farmers. For me, ethics is everything. So, like, I won't even touch any kind of herbs that have been sprayed with any pesticides, insecticides. So, that kind of narrows down a lot for me. So if there's an organic farmer living in India and making like incredible wild harvested frankincense or sandalwood, holy basil, and it's a much higher quality. For me, I want to go with the best sources of medicine for my people. So I'll recommend plants from all over the world. I think that we're always learning and growing too, how to best do that. And I celebrate the diversity of herbs everywhere. And I'm going to like picking and choosing from everything. And also want to support my local herbs and farms.
Right. If someone is looking to purchase their own herbs, what is like a filter they should be running their criteria through before they're purchasing an herb? And you sort of just touched on it, as well as like making sure it's not sprayed. Are there any other filters you run through before you purchase something?
Yes, I think that fresh herbs are really important. So ones that haven't been sitting around for years, they just really won't do much good at that point, unless it's a tincture, which has an indefinite shelf life. You're totally fine. Same thing with flower essences. Do this all the time for my clients, like as far as vetting companies and types of herbal medicines, vitamins, and supplements. So I'm like laser focused on my discernment. I think that takes a long time to do. So don't feel pressure to get it like all on your own. I actually teach all of my people like where you can safely look around on the internet, because internet medicine is loaded, right? And like I find actually very fancy looking things. There's like a shadow side to a lot of herbal and natural medicine too, might be completely unethical. So it's not always in looks and appearances, but I find you absolutely want to see transparency for quality standards. So either certified organic or wild crafted, like period. Right. And if they don't have it there, they're not doing it. Yeah.
Right.
And I found that, they say like, oh, drug, all these other things, third party tested for sure helps out. And then going with people that make recommendations on solid herbal companies. So, the ones that I've worked with for many, many years have never compromised quality standard. And there's one like on the West Coast, Pacific Botanicals, that I love. And then lots of small businesses. So if you get to know the people that are running the practice and vet and see if they care about health first or not. Right.
Yes.
And the ones that do, even if they're very successful, they're huge companies, if they care more about profit first, you're going to see a very different type of product and experience. So yeah, those are a few things. I hope that helps.
I think that's great. And I feel like, at least in the supplement and like mineral world, which I'm sort of more in, usually I've found that if I don't know or it doesn't say on someone's website, I can usually message them and they'll tell me, or they'll send me their third party testing. And I'm like, great, this is amazing. Thank you. So I think it just, yeah, like you said, it really depends on the brand and the people, but that's super valuable. Oh, if someone is looking to find like an herbalist or an Ayurvedic practitioner to work with, are there things you recommend we look for in discerning that for ourselves?
Yes, in a similar vein, I feel like going with any trusted referrals. I work with people all around the country and world. And so I have like all my local people that I love and trust, and I have my network of referrals. And then there's places like I'm working with a woman in Seattle, and she's like, well, who can I see for this? And how can I find a body worker? And so I can just jump online and kind of get a feel for places. I do that all the time. And then also just ask around to people that you love and know in your circle, like who have they seen? Because usually that goes such a long way. I mean, these days reviews are hot, right? That's like attached to most businesses. I think that does help consumers make better decisions. But yeah, not always. I've been burned sometimes from that or seen that, but once you can match both of those things together, that's going to help you out. And then there's some places that have directories as well. Like I did this postpartum conscious caretaking and therapist training with Soma Shakti, Women's School of Vedic Wisdom. They're based in Sydney, Australia, but there's people that have studied with them from around the world. And they're so loving and generous that they just have a directory of anybody that has graduated with them. And then you can just go on their website. So it's kind of a natural vetting. Like, if they graduated from them, like I trust them. That's I know them so well. And then see who's close to you.
That's great. If someone's interested in possibly working with you, what does that client process look like? What could they expect?
Yes. So I love to spend a lot of time getting to know each new person that comes into my practice. So you're a unique whole human being, not a number. And I spend hours with people in a comprehensive intake process. So the first step is to schedule a breakthrough session, which is complimentary and non-binding, for us to just get to know each other better and talk more about your health and wellness goals, any challenges that you've been experiencing, what you're really looking to create around your health and wellness, and then steps that I can provide to help get you there. And then we're looking at like a total of 5 hours, like minimum, in-person time, several hours that I spend creating your new customized clinical herbal formulas. I also do an Ayurvedic assessment on the mind-body constitutional type I mentioned earlier, and a tongue assessment, pulse assessment, and establishing a really strong foundation. So I'm so clear on what you need at this time in your life and for your health. And then like transitioning after that to a slow, steady follow-up process. So staying in touch. I think, and I think I've seen this before in your work as well, which I love, is not feeling I have to do it all at once. Like that can be so stressful, and there's no need to feel that way. Like, so having a really strong start and then implementing changes slowly and steadily over time. So I'm really about lifestyle shifts. So yeah, you can contact me anytime. My website is all like vetted by me. So all of it's like professional content. There's a lot of free resources. And yeah, you can pop me a question. We can just talk privately and see if we're a good fit.
That's great. And I do love how many resources you have on your website. I think that's incredible. And it's a really great way to get to know you before someone potentially works with you too. And all your recipes and recommendations. Your Instagram is also a wealth of knowledge. And would you mind sharing your Instagram handle too?
Yeah. So my name, Whitney _ 4 Seasons Harmony.
4 Seasons Harmony. Love
Yeah.
that. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate this conversation and just you sharing your wisdom about herbs and the healing power of plants in our world around us. I think it's something that we've become a little detached from, and to be able to come back into that and harness the power and the healing of that is incredible.
My sincere pleasure. Yeah, and I hope that everybody can feel like their lives are enhanced by applying herbal medicine. And I think we're in an era where that's only growing in accessibility and increasing our choices. So yeah, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for everyone that was tuning in, listening, and I love what you're doing, Lexie. So yeah, hat off to you, and I wish you the very best.
Thanks, Whitney. Right back at you. I don't know about you, but I feel quite inspired to go harvest some herbs and put together some incredibly supportive teas for my health and well-being. I really enjoyed this conversation with Whitney, and we really just scraped the surface, but I believe there's so much more we can dig into in the future. But I think this is just a great starting point for us to really get the wheels turning in how we can start implementing more herbs and plant medicines that are rich in phytonutrients, minerals, and vitamins, as well as many other healing constituents that we can start to add to our daily routine and just see how our body responds. And like Whitney said, it's all very bio individual and how we respond to things. I know once in my past, I had made up some elderberry tea, and there are some toxic compounds in elderberries. And so it's important to prepare them properly and as well as sourcing them properly. But I know I had a negative response to that in the past. So I was like, okay, I need to shift gears a little bit and, not go so gung ho on the elderberries in the future. But I think those experiences are so valuable because we can learn how we can use these specific healing modalities for ourselves and to support our unique wellness journey. So I hope you enjoyed the show and took some tidbits from it, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Holistic Ascent podcast.